So why don't we just kind of discuss, kind of popcorn around, like what are ways that you see Timothy being fat? We can kind of do all three at once. How do we see him being faithful, available, and teachable in these passages?
One of the passages talks that he's been studying since childhood. He was then well spoken of by the brothers, so his reputation was good. I think in this last passage, he was so confident and equipped that he could be sent by Paul to establish and exhort the church at this point. It's like, wow, that's pretty good transition.
Yeah, so he's been well acquainted with the sacred writings. It says since childhood. You mentioned he was well spoken of by everyone. What was the last one he said? He was
competent enough
to carry the letter
and exhort the church.
Yeah.
To do that.
Yeah, so we see some teachableness, that he's willing to look at the sacred writings since childhood, available, that he's even willing to go on this journey. Faithful, that even going into the areas that he says that's very persecuted. I mean, he was saying like you Thessalonians were very persecuted, but Paul didn't have to worry that Timothy wasn't going to bring the letter. Like, of course he was going to bring the letter. He's Timothy. He's faithful. Right, and so it's kind of like when he says he's going to do something, I know he's going to do it, right? And even if you keep on reading, it says he came back and gave a good report about the Thessalonians. So we know he went and came back, and it was a good report. So good. So several kind of available, faithful, teachable. So what else?
I think kind of something that just underlies all of it is just his love of the Lord.
Love of the Lord.
Yeah. It's not about wanting to be faithful to Paul, or it's just his love of the Lord that it all comes out of that.
Yeah. So Timothy is first and foremost faithful to the Lord over Paul or anyone else, right?
Exactly.
And he loves the Lord a lot. It's good. It's good. So what else? Maybe even some specific verses or anything that stuck out to you guys. What else did you guys see here?
I think Timothy is he's faithful to go to like cross disciples and to go to persecuted areas, but I think he also shows his faithfulness and availability through personal relationship that he has with Paul, just because of what Paul says in 2 Timothy 3 when he just lists all these things that you couldn't really imitate in a person unless you were very close to them, like the love, the steadfastness, like those are things that you glean from people by being in committed relationship with them. Mm-hmm. And so I think Timothy is definitely faithful to do the work, but he's also faithful to be developed personally, and faithful to in order to do that, you have to be available and faithful to literally just being around someone.
Yeah.
Like just faithful to a personal relationship with Paul.
Yeah.
And Paul, in the same way, was faithful to a personal relationship with Timothy. So I think he's faithful in a lot of ways and available in a lot of ways by being able to do the work and just kind of on a one-on-one discipleship level as well.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm really struck by that 2 Timothy 3 passage where it said, you followed me in this. Even it starts out with love and whatnot, then it ends with persecution, and so you can see all three of them in that, he was faithful to endure even under persecution. I don't know, maybe that's something that Paul didn't see in John Mark, which is why he didn't want to get him back. I don't know, we don't really know, but he left midway through, right? He was very available, that he spent a lot of time, like you said. I mean, it seems like they were very close to one another, just not only in love and care for one another, but in proximity and time-wise. They're giving a lot of time to one another. And then just teachable, if Paul was willing to follow all those things, if Timothy was willing to follow Paul in all these things, he's obviously wanting to learn from Paul, right? And so yeah. Anything else, maybe just one or two things, or is that kind of covers it, you think, or anything like that?
With what Monica was saying, we're mentioning that list in 2 Timothy is really a lot of character stuff. Mm-hmm. It's the things that you can't just say, hey, do this and do that and do it like this. And so, that idea of fat doesn't just involve the ministry skills that we're passing on to others, but it involves this character, this love for Jesus that really is driving all things.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it's character and love for Jesus that drives Timothy for sure. So. Yeah, and so I want us to take a minute just to reflect on people that are in our life, maybe we're ministering with, ministering to, training, discipling. Just kind of think through maybe even people that aren't necessarily sharing the gospel like crazy or something. But maybe you can see qualities in them that are fat. Like, well, maybe he's not sharing the gospel, but he's really faithful, available, and teachable in these ways. And so maybe I need to give more time to him and encourage him or her so that she will start to make disciples too. And maybe those are people that I need to set aside time to meet with. And maybe you don't have anyone like that right now, and that's hard, and we can start praying for that. But kind of think through just if you have anyone who is exhibiting qualities of being faithful, available, and teachable, and how can you start acting like Paul was to Timothy with those people, and maybe spending more time setting aside, maybe even trying to encourage them to share, and just things like that.